Welcome to Soft Sleep Tales, a channel where timeless stories, gentle narration, and quiet atmospheres help you drift into rest. Before we begin tonight's tale, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Share it in the comments below. It's always wonderful to see our little community stretching across the world. Now, it's time to get comfortable. Settle into your bed or favorite chair. Close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath. Let the day melt away. Allow my voice to carry you softly into sleep to a place where imagination flows and dreams begin. It is the autumn of 1891, and in the village of Willowmere, nestled in a valley where the river Will meanders through ancient woodland and rolling meadows, there stands a cottage that has served the community for longer than anyone now living can remember. It occupies a plot at the edge of the village green, set back from the lane behind a stone wall overgrown with climbing roses and honeysuckle. Beatrice moves among them like a gardener tending a suspended garden, checking each bundle, turning those that need rotating, removing any that have dried completely and are ready to be stored. The cottage smells of earth and green things, of summers captured and preserved, of remedies waiting to be needed. When the herbs are attended to, she turns her attention to her workbench. It occupies the entire length of the eastern wall, beneath a row of small windows that let in the morning sun. Here she keeps her mortars and pestles, her scales and measures, her jars and bottles and tins, each labelled in her own careful script, with both the common name and the Latin designation of its contents. Tonight she must prepare a cough syrup for Mrs. Fletcher's baby, who has developed a troublesome wheeze with the changing weather. Beatrice assembles her ingredients with the methodical care of someone who understands that precision matters, that the difference between remedy and poison is often merely a matter of measurement. Horehound, coltsfoot, honey from Mr. Preston's hives, a few drops of tincture of elderberry. She works slowly, mixing, heating, straining, tasting, adjusting, until the mixture achieves exactly the consistency and flavor she desires. As she works, the wind picks up outside, rattling the windows and sending leaves skittering across the flagstones of her garden. It is the sort of wind that speaks of winter coming, of cold nights ahead, of the long dark season when her services will be most needed. Beatrice finds comfort in this rhythm, in the predictable turning of the seasons, in knowing what will be required of her. She fills the kettle from the pump in her scullery and hangs it over the fire to boil. While she waits, she removes her apron and cap, loosens the top button of her collar, and settles into her chair by the hearth. The chair that had been her grandmother's, its cushion worn smooth by decades of use. The cottage is small, but sufficient. One main room that serves as both workspace and living area, a small bedchamber beyond, a scullery at the back with a pump and a stone sink. The walls are whitewashed and hung with bunches of herbs. The floor is flagstone, softened here and there with rag rugs that Beatrice made herself during the long winter evenings. And Beatrice has learned to find contentment in such modest blessings. As the kettle begins to sing, Beatrice reaches for her tea caddy, a battered tin that had belonged to her grandmother, decorated with faded images of Chinese gardens, and measures out a careful spoonful of her special evening blend. Chamomile for calm, lemon balm for peace, a pinch of lavender for dreams. She pours the boiling water, inhales the rising steam, and feels the day finally, truly, releasing its hold on her. This is her time, her space, her peace. And it is precisely at this moment, as the tea steeps and the fire settles into glowing coals, that Beatrice notices something unusual. There is a book on her reading table that she does not remember placing there. The cottage is her domain. Everything within it should be accounted for. And yet, here is this book, roughly the size of a large prayer book, bound in dark green leather that has been worn smooth at the corners and along the spine, as though handled many times by many hands. Beatrice sets down her teacup and lifts the book carefully. It has weight, substantial weight, the heft of knowledge accumulated over years. There is no title stamped on the cover or spine, no indication of what it might contain. The leather is cool to the touch, slightly damp, as though the book has recently been brought in from the night air. She opens it to the first page, and her breath catches. The writing is in a hand she knows as well as her own, though she has not seen it in more than 20 years. Precise, elegant, each letter formed with the careful attention of someone who believes that even the simplest task deserves one's best effort. The herbal remedies and practices of Margaret Moorland, compiled in the year of our Lord 1869 for the instruction of my granddaughter Beatrice, should she choose to follow this path. Beatrice's grandmother, dead these 20 years, yet here is her writing, her wisdom, her voice speaking across time as though no years have passed at all. But this is impossible. Beatrice has her grandmother's book already. She keeps it in the locked chest in her bedchamber, along with the other precious things that survived the fire that claimed her grandmother's old cottage when Beatrice was 18. That book she knows intimately, has studied and memorized and put into practice for 2 decades. This is a different book entirely. With trembling hands, Beatrice turns the pages. Here are remedies she has never seen before, combinations of herbs she would never have thought to try. Here are treatments for ailments she has only read about in her medical texts, conditions she has never encountered in her small village practice. Here are observations about the properties of plants, detailed notes on dosages and preparations, warnings about contraindications and potential dangers, and here, scattered throughout like pressed flowers marking favorite passages, are personal notes in her grandmother's hand, observations about the weather, reminiscences about patients long dead, philosophical musings about the nature of healing and the responsibility of the healer. Remember always, one note reads, that we do not heal. We merely provide the conditions under which the body may heal itself. Our role is to support, to comfort, to ease suffering, and to trust in the wisdom of nature, which is greater than all our accumulated knowledge. Beatrice feels tears pricking at her eyes. She blinks them back, composing herself, but the emotion remains, a tight knot in her chest that is part grief, part joy, part something she cannot name. How did this book come to be here? Who brought it? And why now, after all these years? She carries the book back to her chair and sits, setting it carefully on her lap. She sips it slowly, letting the warmth spread through her chest, while her mind circles around the mystery. She was not always an herbalist in a small village. There was a time, it seems impossibly distant now, when Beatrice Moorland was someone else entirely, when she was young, when her grandmother was still living, when the world seemed full of paths that might be taken if only she had the courage to step forward. She had wanted things then. She had dreamed of studying at one of the new medical colleges that were beginning to admit women, of becoming a proper doctor with a degree and letters after her name, of travelling to London or Edinburgh, or even abroad to learn from the great physicians of the age. But then her grandmother had fallen ill. Influenza, the doctor said, though Beatrice suspected it was something more, something that had been growing inside her grandmother for years, slowly stealing her strength. For 6 months, Beatrice had nursed her, brewing the remedies that her grandmother directed her to make, sitting by her bedside through long nights, learning in those final weeks more about healing than she could have learned in any classroom. And then her grandmother was gone, and the cottage was hers, and the people of Willowmere were looking to her to take up the work that needed doing. The village had no proper doctor. The nearest physician was in Market Haworth, 7 miles away, too far for most people to travel except in dire emergencies. They needed someone who could treat common ailments, deliver babies, sit with the dying, provide the everyday care that kept a community healthy. Beatrice had accepted the role because what choice had she? Someone had to do it, and she had the knowledge, the training, the herbs and tools and recipes. And now there is this book, appearing as if by magic, filled with her grandmother's wisdom, sitting in her lap like a question she cannot answer. Beatrice finishes her tea and sets the cup aside. Tomorrow she will try to solve the mystery. Tomorrow she will make inquiries, search for explanations, attempt to understand how this impossible thing has come to be. But tonight, she will simply read. She opens the book to a page at random and begins. The morning arrives cold and clear, the frost thick on the ground and glittering like scattered diamonds in the early sunlight. Beatrice wakes at her usual hour, 5:30, early enough to tend her garden before the day's work begins, and performs her morning rituals with the same careful attention she brings to all her tasks. Her cottage is chilly, the fire having died to ashes overnight, and she rebuilds it now with quick efficiency, kindling arranged in a careful structure, larger pieces of wood placed just so, a single match applied to the paper tucked beneath. The flames catch and spread, and within minutes the cottage is beginning to warm. While the kettle heats for her morning tea, Beatrice dresses in her working clothes, a serviceable brown dress, a clean white apron, sturdy boots for walking the muddy lanes. She pins her hair into its customary neat bun, splashes cold water on her face from the basin in her bedchamber, and studies herself briefly in the small mirror that hangs above her washstand. She sees a woman, neither young nor old, with a face marked by kindness and care rather than beauty, with eyes that have seen much suffering and learned to bear witness without flinching, with hands that are always in motion, always working, always ready to provide comfort or aid. She sees someone who has chosen service over self, duty over dreams, and she wonders, not for the first time, but perhaps more acutely this morning, whether that choice was truly hers, or whether it was made for her by circumstance and necessity and the expectations of others. By 6 o'clock, Beatrice has breakfasted on porridge and tea, has checked her supplies and made note of what needs replenishing, and has ventured out into her garden to harvest the last of the season's growth before the frost kills everything back to the roots. The garden is her pride and her necessity, a 1/4 acre of carefully tended beds where she grows the herbs and medicinal plants that are the foundation of her work. She moves among the beds with practiced efficiency, snipping here, pulling there, gathering the final harvest of feverfew and calendula, cutting back the spent stems of echinacea and valerian. The air is sharp and clean, smelling of frost and fallen leaves and the rich, dark earth. Above her, a pair of crows call to each other from the branches of the old apple tree that marks the boundary between her garden and the lane. As she works, Beatrice's mind returns again and again to the mysterious book. She has placed it on her shelf between her grandmother's original Herbal and her copy of Culpeper's Complete Herbal, where it sits looking entirely ordinary and unremarkable, as though it has always been there, and Beatrice has simply failed to notice it until now. But it wasn't there yesterday. Of that she is certain. She dusted that shelf just 3 days ago, and she would have seen it, would have remembered it, would have wondered at its presence. Someone must have brought it. But who? And more puzzling still, how did they enter her cottage without her knowing? She locks the door each night before retiring, and the windows are all secured against the autumn drafts. There is no sign of forced entry, no indication that anyone has disturbed her space. It is a mystery, and Beatrice has never been comfortable with mysteries. She prefers things that can be explained, understood, reduced to their component parts, and reassembled into something logical and comprehensible. At 8 o'clock, she opens her cottage door and hangs out the small wooden sign that indicates she is available for consultations. The sign is painted green with white lettering that reads simply, B. Moorland, Herbalist. It had been her grandmother's sign, and before that, her great-grandmother's, passed down through 4 generations of women who had chosen, or been chosen by, this path of healing. The first visitor arrives within minutes, young Sarah Cooper, the blacksmith's daughter, who has come to collect the cough syrup that Beatrice prepared last night. Beatrice pours it carefully into a small brown bottle, seals it with a cork, and instructs Sarah on the proper dosage. A spoonful 3 times daily, mixed with warm water if the child objects to the taste. Continue for a full week, even if the symptoms improve before then. Sarah pays with a basket of apples from her father's tree, crisp and sweet and perfect for making the apple cider vinegar that Beatrice uses in several of her preparations. It is the way of things in Willowmere. Money rarely changes hands. Instead, there is a complex web of exchange and obligation, of favors given and remembered, of payment made in goods and services rather than coin. And then, the morning proceeds in its usual rhythm. Mrs. Thompson comes in with a sprained wrist that needs a wrapping. Mr. Davies needs his tonic for his weak stomach. Young Thomas Miller has a cut on his hand from the carpentry work that requires cleaning and bandaging. Beatrice tends to each with the same patient attention, the same gentle efficiency, listening to their complaints, offering remedies and advice, providing not just medicine, but also comfort, reassurance, a listening ear. Between patients, during the quiet moments, Beatrice finds herself drawn back to the mysterious book. She takes it down from the shelf and pages through it, marveling at the depth of knowledge it contains, at remedies she has never heard of, at her grandmother's clear and methodical notes. Here is a treatment for consumption that involves a complex preparation of mullein and elecampane and coltsfoot, mixed with honey and age for 3 months in darkness. Here are detailed instructions for delivering a breech baby, with diagrams and warnings and encouragements written in her grandmother's firm hand. Here are recipes for treating melancholy, for easing the pain of childbirth, for preventing infection in surgical wounds. It is, Beatrice realizes, a lifetime of knowledge. More than that, it is generations of knowledge accumulated by the women of her family over centuries, refined and tested and proven through countless applications. It is a treasure beyond price. But where has it been for 20 years? Why did it not burn in the fire that destroyed her grandmother's cottage? And who has kept it safe all this time, only to return it now? At noon, Beatrice closes her door for her dinner hour. She climbs the narrow stairs to her bedchamber, barely more than a closet under the eaves, but cozy and private, and retrieves from her locked chest the book she has used for the past 20 years, her grandmother's original herbal, the one that survived the fire because Beatrice had borrowed it the week before and kept it in her own rooms at the house where she was living while nursing her grandmother. She brings both books down to her table and places them side by side. The original is smaller, more worn, its pages yellowed and brittle. The new book, she has begun to think of it as the new book, though it is clearly old, is larger, more comprehensive, its pages still supple despite their age. She opens both books to their first pages and compares the handwriting. It is identical, unmistakably her grandmother's precise script, with its distinctive loops and flourishes, the way she crosses her T's and dots her I's. But that is impossible, unless her grandmother kept two books, working on them simultaneously, updating both with the same information. But why would anyone do that? It would be needlessly complicated, a waste of time and effort. Beatrice sits at her table, her untouched dinner growing cold beside her, and tries to solve the puzzle. She is a woman who believes in reason, in logic, in cause and effect. There must be an explanation. There must be a chain of events that led to this book appearing in her cottage. Someone must have brought it. Someone must know where it came from. But who? The obvious answer is that it was someone who knew her grandmother, someone who might have been entrusted with this book for safekeeping. But most of her grandmother's generation are dead now, and those who remain are ancient, unlikely to be venturing out on cold October nights to slip mysterious books into locked cottages, unless it was delivered during the day, while Beatrice was out gathering herbs or visiting a patient in one of the outlying farms. But surely she would have noticed. Surely someone in the village would have seen a stranger entering her cottage and mentioned it to her. Willowmere is that sort of place. Everyone knows everyone else's business. A newcomer is noticed immediately, remarked upon, discussed. Nothing happens without the entire village hearing about it within hours. And yet this book has appeared impossibly, inexplicably, as though delivered by unseen hands. Beatrice becomes aware that she is sitting in complete stillness, her dinner forgotten, her afternoon appointments approaching, and she has solved nothing. She forces herself to eat a few bites of bread and cheese, to drink some water, to return to the present moment and the work that awaits her. The mystery will have to wait. People are depending on her, and that must come first. The afternoon brings a different sort of visitor. Just past 3 o'clock, when the autumn light is already beginning to fail and Beatrice has lit her lamps against the gathering dimness. There is a knock at her door. Not the familiar rap of a villager seeking help, but something more tentative, uncertain. Beatrice opens the door to find a woman she has never seen before. She is perhaps 60 years old, tall and spare, with silver hair pinned severely back from a face marked by intelligence and something else, sadness perhaps, or regret. She is dressed in the black of mourning, her clothes well made but worn, speaking of genteel poverty, of someone who has known better days. "Miss Moorland?" the woman asks, her voice soft but clear, with the accent of education and refinement. "I am she. How may I help you?" "My name is Eleanor Hartwell. I wonder if I might come in. I have travelled some distance to speak with you, and what I have to say may take some time." Beatrice hesitates only a moment before stepping aside to allow the woman entry. There is something about her bearing, her manner, that speaks of trustworthiness, of good intentions. And Beatrice has learned over years of dealing with people in pain and distress to trust her instincts about such things. Eleanor enters the cottage and stands for a moment, looking around with an expression that Beatrice cannot quite interpret. Recognition, perhaps, mixed with nostalgia and pain. "It is very much as I remember it," Eleanor says quietly. "Though smaller, perhaps. Or perhaps I am simply larger. Everything seems smaller when one returns to the places of childhood." "You knew this cottage?" Beatrice asks, surprised. "I knew its predecessor," Eleanor says. "The cottage that stood here before the fire. I used to come here as a girl with my mother to visit your grandmother. They were friends, you see, close friends, though from very different circumstances." She turns to face Beatrice, and her eyes are bright with unshed tears. "I am the one who brought you the book." Beatrice feels something shift in her chest, a quickening of attention. "Please sit," she says, indicating her best chair by the fire. "Would you care for tea?" "That would be most welcome. Thank you." Beatrice busies herself with the kettle and the tea things, while Eleanor settles into the chair with a sigh that speaks of long travel and deep weariness. When the tea is ready, Beatrice pours 2 cups and brings them to the fireside, settling herself in her grandmother's chair and waiting for Eleanor to begin. "You must be wondering about many things," Eleanor says at last, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "And I will endeavour to explain, though the story is long and in some ways difficult to tell." "I am listening," Beatrice says simply. Eleanor takes a sip of tea, seeming to gather her thoughts, and then begins to speak. "Your grandmother and my mother were girls together, here in Willowmere. They were born within a week of each other, in the same year, and they grew up as close as sisters. Your grandmother was the daughter of the village herbalist, as you know. My mother was the daughter of the squire, a position that should have placed a great distance between them, but did not. They were kindred spirits, you see, both curious, both intelligent, both determined to understand the world in ways that girls of that time were not encouraged to pursue." Beatrice listens, picturing her grandmother as a young girl, imagining a friendship that transcended the rigid boundaries of class and station. "When they were 15, Eleanor continues, your great-grandmother began teaching your grandmother the herbal arts. My mother begged to be allowed to learn as well. Her own mother was horrified, of course, the daughter of the squire, studying folk medicine like a common village woman. It was unthinkable. But my mother was determined, and your great-grandmother was a remarkable woman who believed that knowledge should be shared with anyone willing to learn. So they studied together, Beatrice says. They did. For 5 years, they learned everything your great-grandmother could teach them. They worked side by side, preparing remedies, tending the sick, delivering babies. They kept 2 copies of every recipe, every observation, every discovery, one for your grandmother to add to the family herbal, and one for my mother to keep for herself. Understanding begins to dawn. The book, Beatrice says, the one that appeared in my cottage, it was your mother's copy. Eleanor nods. It was. When she married and moved away from Willowmere, an arranged match, to a gentleman who lived in Hampshire, she took the book with her. It was her most precious possession, she used to say, a reminder of the friend she had left behind, of the life she might have lived if circumstances had been different. And she never saw my grandmother again. They corresponded for a time, Eleanor says, but my mother's husband was not a kind man. He forbade her from practicing any sort of healing, said it was beneath her station, unsuitable for his wife. He burned her herbs, destroyed her equipment, and eventually forbade her from writing to your grandmother. She obeyed, as wives were expected to do in those days. But she kept the book hidden away, and she continued to study it in secret, to add her own notes and observations, to pass on what she learned to me when I was old enough to understand. She pauses, her expression distant, remembering. She used to tell me about Willowmere, about her friend Margaret, your grandmother, about the work they had done together. She said that those 5 years were the happiest of her life, and that she had spent the rest of her days longing to return, if only for a visit. But my father would not allow it, and after he died, her health was too poor for travel. I am sorry, Beatrice says quietly, and means it. She is thinking of her own life, of the choices she has made, or that have been made for her, of the narrow path she walks compared to the broad horizons she once imagined. She understands something of what this woman's mother must have felt, trapped in a life that allowed no room for the work she loved. She died 3 months ago, Eleanor continues. Before she passed, she made me promise that I would bring the book back to Willowmere, that I would return it to Margaret's granddaughter if she was still here, still carrying on the work. She said it belonged here, with the family, that its knowledge should not be lost. But why did you not simply knock at my door? Beatrice asks. Why leave it secretly, in the night? Eleanor smiles sadly. I am not entirely sure myself. I arrived in the village yesterday afternoon and made inquiries at the inn. They told me about you, about the work you do, about how you have taken up your grandmother's calling. And I found myself overcome with emotion, with grief for my mother, with sadness for all the lost years, with a strange sort of shame that I had never come before, never sought to honor the friendship that meant so much to her. She sets down her teacup and looks directly at Beatrice. Last evening, while you were out, I saw you leave to visit a farm at the edge of the village. I entered your cottage. The door was unlocked, as doors so often are in small villages where everyone knows everyone. I placed the book on your table and left. I told myself that I would depart this morning without speaking to you, that the book was enough, that my duty was discharged. But you changed your mind. I could not leave without at least trying to explain. My mother would have wanted that. She would have wanted you to know the story, to understand where the book came from and why it matters. Beatrice sits in silence for a moment, absorbing this. The mystery is solved, but in its place has come something more complex. A story of friendship and loss, of knowledge preserved across generations, of bonds that endure even when circumstances force them apart. "Did you learn?" she asks at last. "From your mother? From the book? Did you learn the herbal arts?" Eleanor nods. "I did, though I was never able to practice openly, as you do. After my father died, my mother and I lived quietly in a small cottage on the edge of Bath. I tended to our neighbours discreetly, providing remedies and care to those who could not afford physicians. It was not the life my mother might have lived here, working alongside your grandmother, but it was something. It was a way of honouring what they had begun together. And now? Now I'm alone. My mother is gone. The cottage has been sold to settle debts. I have very little money and no particular prospects." She smiles, a brittle smile that does not reach her eyes. "I am, as they say, at loose ends, adrift in the world with nothing but the knowledge in my head and the clothes on my back." Beatrice feels something stirring in her chest, some emotion she cannot immediately name. It is not pity, exactly, though there is compassion in it. It is more like recognition, as though she is seeing in this woman a mirror of herself, or of what she might have become if circumstances had been slightly different. An idea begins to form, strange and impractical, and yet somehow feeling entirely right. "Miss Hartwell," she says slowly, "how would you feel about staying in Willowmere for a time? I could use an assistant in my work, someone with knowledge and skill, someone who understands the responsibility of healing. The cottage is small, but there is room enough for two if we are willing to manage with limited space. And while I cannot offer much in the way of wages, you would have a roof over your head, food to eat, and work that has meaning and purpose." Eleanor stares at her, clearly taken aback. "Miss Moorland, I could not possibly impose—" "It would not be an imposition," Beatrice says, and realizes as she speaks that she means it. The work is more than one person can manage during the winter months, when illness is most prevalent. "I have been considering taking on an apprentice for some time, but none of the village girls have shown the aptitude or inclination. You have both the knowledge and the calling. And there is a symmetry to it, is there not? Your mother and my grandmother worked together. Why should we not do the same?" She can see Eleanor struggling with the offer, pride warring with need, caution battling with hope. Beatrice understands that struggle. She has felt it herself more times than she can count, the desire to accept help against the ingrained belief that one should be self-sufficient, that to need others is somehow a weakness or a failure. "Let me propose this," Beatrice says gently. "Stay for a trial period, a month, perhaps, or until Christmas. If at the end of that time you find the arrangement unsuitable, you are free to leave with my blessing and whatever small funds I can provide to help you on your way, but at least give it a chance. Give us both a chance to honor what our grandmothers began." Eleanor's eyes fill with tears, and she does not try to hide them. "You are very kind, kinder than I deserve. Coming here as I did, entering your home without permission." "You brought me a gift beyond price," Beatrice interrupts. "You brought me knowledge that I thought was lost forever, and in doing so, you have given me something I did not even know I needed. A connection to my grandmother's past, to her friendship with your mother, to the larger story of which I am a part. that deserves kindness in return. Eleanor wipes her eyes with a handkerchief produced from her sleeve. Then I accept, with gratitude. I will try to be useful to you, to prove myself worthy of this opportunity. I have no doubt of it, Beatrice says, and finds that she is smiling, genuinely smiling, in a way she hasn't done in longer than she can remember. The days that follow establish a new rhythm in the cottage, one that feels both strange and natural, like a melody that has been missing a harmony and is now complete. Eleanor proves to be everything Beatrice could have hoped for in an assistant. Knowledgeable, careful, attentive to detail, and possessed of a gentle manner with patience that puts even the most anxious at ease. Together, they work through the tasks that pile up as winter approaches. They prepare batches of cough syrups and tonics, anticipating the respiratory ailments that always come with cold weather. They make poultices and salves, ointments for chilblains and balms for chapped skin. They preserve the last of the garden's harvest, drying herbs and roots, making tinctures and extracts, ensuring that they will have supplies to last through the months when nothing grows. In the evenings, after the day's work is done and the door is locked and the fire is banked for the night, they sit together with the two herbals, the original and Eleanor's mother's copy, and compare notes, discussing remedies and treatments, sharing observations and experiences, adding their own annotations to the accumulated wisdom of generations. Beatrice learns things she had never known, techniques that her grandmother never had the chance to teach her, remedies that exist only in Eleanor's mother's book, and in teaching Eleanor the specific practices of Willowmere, the particular needs and characteristics of this village and its people, Beatrice finds herself understanding her own work more deeply, seeing it with fresh eyes through Eleanor's perspective. They talk, too, about things beyond medicine, about their lives, their losses, their regrets and hopes. Eleanor speaks of her mother, of the vibrant young woman she must have been before marriage and duty constrained her, of the quiet courage it took to preserve her knowledge in secret and pass it on despite her husband's prohibitions. Beatrice speaks of her own grandmother, of the fierce intelligence and independence that marked her, of the impossible choice between serving her community and pursuing her own dreams. "Do you ever regret it?" Eleanor asks one evening, as they sit by the fire with mugs of chamomile tea warming their hands. "Staying here, doing this work, instead of going to medical school as you had hoped?" Beatrice considers the question carefully. It is something she asks herself often, late at night, when sleep will not come, or on difficult days when she feels overwhelmed by the endless stream of need. "I regret the choice I did not get to make," she says finally. "I regret that circumstances forced my hand, that I never had the opportunity to try, to fail or succeed on my own terms. But the work itself? No, I do not regret that. How can I regret easing pain, preventing death, bringing babies safely into the world? How can I regret being useful, being needed, being part of this community?" And yet, you wonder what might have been. Always, Beatrice admits. "I wonder who I might have become, what I might have discovered, what contributions I might have made to medical knowledge. I wonder if I settled too easily, if I let fear and duty keep me from reaching for something larger." Eleanor nods slowly. "My mother used to say that the hardest thing about being a woman is that we are always choosing between different kinds of sacrifice. We can sacrifice our work for our families, or our families for our work, but we cannot seem to have both. Not fully, not in the way that men can. And whichever we choose, there will always be a part of us that mourns what we gave up. Do you think that will ever change? Beatrice asks. Perhaps. There are women entering universities now, studying medicine and law, doing things our grandmothers would not have dared to dream. Perhaps the generation coming after us will have choices we did not have. Perhaps they will not have to sacrifice so much. I hope so, Beatrice says softly. I hope they will look back on us and shake their heads at the narrowness of our lives, the limitations we endured. I hope they will have the freedom to become everything they might be. They sit in companionable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers, each lost in her own thoughts. Beatrice finds herself feeling something she has not felt in years. Not quite happiness, but something close to it. Contentment, perhaps, but deeper than that. A sense of rightness, of being where she is meant to be, with someone who understands without needing explanation. Winter settles over Willowmere like a heavy blanket, bringing with it the predictable increase in illness and injury that keeps Beatrice and Eleanor busy from dawn until well past dark most days. There are cases of influenza, pneumonia, bronchitis. There are injuries from farm work and household accidents. There are the chronic ailments that plague the elderly in cold weather, rheumatism and gout, weak hearts and failing lungs. Beatrice and Eleanor work in tandem, each bringing her particular strengths to bear. Eleanor is better at diagnosis, at identifying subtle symptoms and making connections that Beatrice might miss. Beatrice is better at the practical work of treatment, at preparing remedies quickly and efficiently, at knowing instinctively how much or how little a patient needs. Together, they are formidable, and the village begins to notice. People comment on how well Miss Moorland's new assistant fits in. How fortunate it is that she came to Willowmere just when she was most needed. How it seems almost providential that the two women should have found each other. Beatrice smiles at such comments, but says little. She has learned over years of village life that some mysteries are better left unexplained, some questions better left unasked. Let people think what they will. What matters is the work, and the work has never been better. One snowy evening in late December, as Christmas approaches and the village prepares for its modest celebrations, Eleanor comes to Beatrice with a proposition. I have been thinking, she says, as they sit together after supper, mending by the fire while wind howls outside and snow piles against the windows, about the two books, your grandmother's and my mother's. They contain essentially the same core knowledge, but each has its own unique additions, its own particular wisdom. That is true, Beatrice agrees, wondering where this is leading. What if we were to create a third book? Eleanor continues. A comprehensive volume that combines the knowledge from both sources, that adds our own observations and experiences, that becomes a complete record of everything we know. We could work on it together over the winter, and by spring we would have something truly remarkable, a herbal that represents 4 generations of women healers, all of their accumulated wisdom preserved in one place. Beatrice feels her heart quicken at the idea. It is ambitious, perhaps even presumptuous, to think that their knowledge deserves to be preserved alongside that of their grandmothers. And yet, Why not? They have learned things through their own practice, discovered techniques and remedies that work, accumulated experience that is valuable in its own right. It would be a large undertaking, she says slowly. It would take months of work, hundreds of hours of careful transcription and organization. We have the time, Eleanor points out. The winter evenings are long, and we are both accustomed to detailed, painstaking work. And think of what it would mean, not just for us, but for whoever comes after us, your apprentice, when you eventually taken a village girl to train, my daughter or granddaughter, if I am ever blessed with such. Any woman who chooses this path will have at her disposal the distilled wisdom of generations. Beatrice makes her decision in that moment, acting on impulse in a way that is quite unlike her usual careful deliberation. Yes, she says firmly. Yes, let us do it. Let us create something that will outlast us, that will be our legacy to those who come after. And so they begin. They purchase a large blank journal from the stationer in Market Haworth, the finest they can afford, with thick cream-coloured pages and a binding that will last for decades. They set up a system of organisation, dividing remedies by ailment rather than by ingredient, cross-referencing thoroughly, including detailed instructions and warnings and notes on variations. They work on it every evening, after the day's patients have been seen and the day's remedies prepared. Eleanor's handwriting is clearer than Beatrice's, so she does most of the transcription while Beatrice dictates and checks for accuracy. They argue sometimes about dosages or techniques, about whether a particular remedy is truly effective or merely traditional. But they always resolve their differences through careful discussion and, when possible, through experimentation and observation. The work is slow, meticulous, demanding, but it is also deeply satisfying, a kind of creation that feels almost sacred in its importance. They are not merely copying information from one book to another. They are synthesizing knowledge, adding context and understanding, creating something new from the foundation of what came before. As winter deepens and then begins to turn toward spring, the book grows. Page after page fills with their careful script, with diagrams and recipes, with case studies and cautionary tales. It becomes a compendium of healing knowledge, practical and comprehensive, covering everything from the treatment of common colds to the management of difficult childbirths to the easing of dying. And as they work, Beatrice feels something shifting inside herself. The restlessness that has troubled her for years, the sense of having settled for less than she might have achieved, begins to quiet. She sees now that her grandmother's path was not a lesser path, not a compromise or a failure, but a legitimate calling in its own right. The knowledge she has gained through 20 years of practice is as valuable as anything she might have learned in a medical school. The lives she has touched, the suffering she has eased, the deaths she has made more peaceful. These things matter. They are not lesser achievements simply because they happened in a small village rather than a great city, because they were done by an herbalist rather than a physician with a degree. And more than that, she sees that by bringing Eleanor here, by creating this new herbal, by establishing a partnership that may continue for years to come, she is building something that will outlast her individual life. She is creating a legacy, contributing to a tradition that stretches back generations and will, if she and Eleanor do their work well, continue for generations to come. Spring arrives gradually, the snow melting in fits and starts, the ground softening, the first green shoots pushing through the dark earth. Beatrice and Eleanor venture out into the awakening garden, assessing what has survived the winter, planning what new plants they will add, dreaming of the growing season ahead. The herbal is nearly complete. They have only a few more sections to transcribe, a few more remedies to record. They estimate that it will be finished by Easter, a fitting time for completion, for the celebration of new life and new beginnings. One morning in late March, as Beatrice is working in her garden and Eleanor is inside preparing the day's first batch of remedies, a carriage pulls up outside the cottage. This is unusual enough to make Beatrice pause in her work and straighten up to see who has arrived. A gentleman emerges from the carriage, middle-aged, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He looks around with interest, taking in the cottage, the garden, the herbalist sign hanging beside the door. Beatrice wipes her muddy hands on her apron and approaches. "Good morning. May I help you?" "Miss Moorland?" the man inquires. "Miss Beatrice Moorland, the herbalist." "I am she. My name is Dr. Robert Caldwell. I am a physician practicing in Bath, and I have come on a rather unusual errand." He reaches into his coat and withdraws a letter. "I have been asked by a colleague in London, a woman physician named Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, to extend to you an invitation." Beatrice takes the letter with fingers that tremble slightly. She recognizes the name. Dr. Anderson is one of the first women to qualify as a physician in England, a pioneer who has fought for decades to open the medical profession to women. "Perhaps you should read it yourself," Dr. Caldwell says kindly, seeming to notice her confusion. Beatrice breaks the seal and unfolds the letter. The handwriting is bold and confident. "Dear Miss Moorland, I hope you will forgive this unexpected approach. I have recently become aware of your work in Willowmere through a rather circuitous route. A patient of mine mentioned her sister, whose child was treated by you for a persistent fever that resisted all conventional treatment. The child recovered completely under your care, and the mother was eloquent in her praise of your knowledge and skill. This prompted me to make further inquiries, and I have learned that you are something of a legend in your corner of Somerset, a woman with exceptional diagnostic abilities and a comprehensive knowledge of herbal medicine, who has served your community with distinction for 2 decades. I am writing to ask if you would consider coming to London for a period of 3 months to assist in a research project I am undertaking. Along with several colleagues, I am working to document and evaluate traditional herbal remedies, with the goal of integrating the most effective ones into conventional medical practice. Your expertise would be invaluable to this work, and I believe the experience would be mutually beneficial. You would have the opportunity to work alongside trained physicians, to access medical texts and resources not available in a village setting, and to contribute to research that may help legitimize the work that women healers have been doing for centuries. I can offer modest compensation for your time, as well as room and board in London. I understand that leaving your practice for 3 months would be a significant undertaking, but I hope you will give this serious consideration. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Dr. Caldwell, who is delivering this letter, can answer any questions you might have about the particulars. With great respect and hope, Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson. Beatrice reads the letter twice, then looks up at Dr. Caldwell with what must be a rather stunned expression, because he smiles. "It is quite an opportunity," he says gently. Dr. Anderson does not extend such invitations lightly. She clearly believes you have something valuable to contribute. "But my practice," Beatrice says, her mind spinning. "I cannot simply abandon my responsibilities here for 3 months. The people of Willowmere depend on me." "Do you have an assistant?" Dr. Caldwell asks. "Someone who could manage in your absence?" Beatrice thinks of Eleanor, of the months they have worked together, of the knowledge and skill Eleanor has demonstrated. "I do, yes. She is more than capable." "Then perhaps it is not as impossible as you think." Beatrice excuses herself and goes inside, where she finds Eleanor grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. She shows her the letter, watches Eleanor's eyes widen as she reads. "Beatrice," Eleanor breathes, "this is extraordinary. This is everything you once dreamed of. The chance to study, to work alongside educated physicians, to contribute to medical knowledge. But I cannot leave you alone to manage everything here." "Why not?" Eleanor interrupts. "I'm perfectly capable. You have trained me well, and I have years of experience from working with my mother. The village knows me now, trusts me. I can handle the routine cases, and anything truly serious can wait until your return, or can be referred to Dr. Caldwell." "Are you certain?" Eleanor takes Beatrice's hands in her own. "Listen to me. When I came to Willowmere, I had nothing. No home, no prospects, no purpose. You gave me all of those things. You gave me back my life, my calling, my usefulness. Let me do this for you in return. Let me hold things together here so that you can have this chance. Our grandmothers would have wanted this. They would have celebrated it." Beatrice feels tears pricking at her eyes. She is 40 years old, and she had thought all doors were closed, all opportunities past. And now here is this unlikely gift, this second chance, this possibility of becoming something more than what she has been. 3 months, she says slowly. "It is only 3 months. And when you return, you will bring back knowledge that will make you an even better healer. Knowledge that we can add to our book, that we can use to help even more people. It is not a leaving, Beatrice. It is an expansion. It is growth." Dr. Caldwell is waiting patiently in the garden when Beatrice emerges from the cottage. She has wiped her eyes, composed herself, made her decision. "Please tell Dr. Anderson that I accept her invitation," Beatrice says, her voice steady despite the fear and excitement warring inside her. "I will need a week to make arrangements to ensure that my assistant is prepared to manage in my absence. After that, I will be ready to come to London." Dr. Caldwell's face lights up with a genuine smile. "Excellent. I will convey your acceptance. Dr. Anderson will be delighted." He hands her a card with an address in London. "When you are ready to travel, send word to this address, and arrangements will be made for your journey and accommodation." After he has departed, Beatrice stands in her garden for a long moment, looking at the cottage that has been her entire world for so many years, feeling the weight of the decision she has just made. Behind her, she hears the door open, feels Eleanor's presence beside her. "No regrets?" Eleanor asks softly. "Not yet," Beatrice says, and finds that she is smiling. "Ask me again when I am in London, surrounded by educated physicians who will probably think me a foolish countrywoman who knows nothing of real medicine. They will learn better, Eleanor says firmly. Just as we have learned that knowledge can come from many sources, that healing is not the exclusive province of men with university degrees. You will teach them that, Beatrice. You will show them what women have always known, that there is wisdom in tradition, power in plants, healing in the careful attention of someone who truly cares. The week passes in a flurry of preparation. Beatrice makes lists, organizes her supplies, briefs Eleanor on each of her regular patients and their particular needs and quirks. She visits the farms on the outskirts of the village, letting people know that she will be away for a few months, but that Miss Hartwell will be caring for them in her absence. The villagers are surprised, but not dismayed. They have come to trust Eleanor over the winter months, have seen her skill and gentleness, have learned that she is a worthy successor to Miss Moorland's teachings. There is curiosity about where Beatrice is going and why, and she explains in simple terms. She has been invited to assist with medical research in London, to share her knowledge with physicians who are interested in herbal remedies. Some of the older women nod approvingly at this. About time the fancy doctors paid attention to what we've always known, Mrs. Patterson says. You go and teach them, Miss Moorland. Show them that our ways are just as good as their book learning. On her final evening before departure, Beatrice and Eleanor complete the last page of the herbal. It has taken them 5 months of steady work, but it is done. A comprehensive record of generations of healing knowledge, beautifully transcribed, thoroughly organized, ready to be used by anyone who needs it. They write a final entry together, each taking turns with the pen. This herbal represents the accumulated wisdom of 4 generations of women healers, from Margaret Moorland and Catherine Hartwell, who began as girls studying together in Willowmere in the 1830s, through their daughters and granddaughters, to us, Beatrice Moorland and Eleanor Hartwell, who have had the privilege of working together to compile and preserve this knowledge. We offer it to any woman who feels called to the work of healing, who wishes to serve her community through the careful use of herbs and the gentle art of caring. We ask only that she use this knowledge wisely, that she continue to add her own observations and discoveries, and that she pass it on to the next generation when her time comes. Healing is not merely the treatment of disease. It is the easing of suffering, the comfort of the frightened, the support of the struggling, the gentle accompaniment of the dying. It is presence and attention and care. It is the recognition that every person who comes to us in need deserves to be seen, heard, and treated with dignity. May those who use this book remember always that we do not heal. We merely create the conditions in which healing can occur. And may they find in this work the same satisfaction, purpose, and joy that we have known. Written in Willowmere, Somerset, in the spring of 1892, Beatrice Moorland and Eleanor Hartwell. They set down the pen and look at each other, both feeling the weight of what they have accomplished. Our grandmothers would be proud, Eleanor says softly. They would indeed, Beatrice agrees. That night, Beatrice lies awake in her narrow bed under the eaves, listening to the sounds of the cottage settling, to Eleanor's gentle breathing from the pallet they have set up in the corner of the main room. Tomorrow, she will board a train to London. Tomorrow, she will step into a world she has only imagined, will work alongside the kind of people she once dreamed of becoming. She feels fear, certainly. She feels doubt about her own abilities, worry about whether she will be able to hold her own among educated physicians. But she feels something else too: excitement, anticipation, hope. The sense that her story is not over, that there are still chapters to be written, still experiences to be had, still ways to grow and learn and become more than she is. She thinks of the mysterious book that appeared in her cottage, the chain of events it set in motion. Eleanor's arrival, their partnership, the comprehensive herbal they have created together, and now this invitation to London. It is as though some invisible force has been arranging things, opening doors, creating opportunities. Or perhaps, she thinks, it is simply that when one is ready to receive gifts, the universe has a way of providing them. When one is open to change, change comes. When one stops merely enduring and starts truly living, life responds in kind. The journey to London is long but not unpleasant. Beatrice has packed a small case with her essential belongings and her grandmother's original herbal. She leaves Eleanor's mother's book with Eleanor, along with the new comprehensive volume they have created together. She wears her best dress, a dark blue wool that she has carefully brushed and mended, and a warm cloak against the spring chill. As the train carries her through the countryside, past villages and towns, and eventually into the great sprawling mass of London, Beatrice watches through the window and feels her perspective expanding. The world is so much larger than Willowmere, so much more complex and various, and she is going to be part of it, for a little while at least. She is going to contribute something, learn something, become something more than she has been. Dr. Anderson meets her at the station, a handsome woman in her 50s, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile, dressed in practical clothing that speaks of someone who has work to do and no time for unnecessary frippery. "Miss Moorland," she says, extending her hand for a firm handshake. "Welcome to London. I am so pleased you accepted my invitation." "Thank you for extending it, Dr. Anderson. I am honored to be here." "The honor is mine, I assure you. Come, let me show you where you will be staying, and then we can discuss the work we have ahead of us." The next 3 months pass in a blur of activity and learning. Beatrice works alongside Dr. Anderson and her colleagues, sharing her knowledge of herbal remedies, discussing cases, learning about diagnostic techniques and treatments she has never encountered before. She reads medical texts, attends lectures, observes surgeries, and slowly, gradually, begins to understand how her traditional knowledge fits into the larger world of medicine. The physicians she works with treat her with respect. Once they overcome their initial skepticism, they are surprised by the depth of her knowledge, by her careful observations and detailed record keeping, by her willingness to question and challenge when something does not make sense to her. Several of them tell her that she has the mind of a physician, that she should have been given the opportunity to study formally, that it is a waste of talent that women of her generation were denied access to medical education. Beatrice accepts these compliments graciously, but without bitterness. She knows now that her path, unconventional as it has been, has value. She has learned things through 20 years of practice that no medical school could have taught her. She has developed instincts and insights that come only from deep immersion in the actual work of healing. She writes long letters to Eleanor, describing her experiences, asking questions about how things are going in Willowmere, sharing new remedies and techniques she is learning. Eleanor writes back with news from the village, with questions of her own, with encouragement and pride in Beatrice's accomplishments. And as the weeks pass, Beatrice begins to understand something important. She does not have to choose between being a village herbalist and being part of the larger medical world. She can be both. She can take what she is learning here and bring it back to Willowmere, enriching her practice, improving her treatments, and she can continue to share her traditional knowledge with physicians who are willing to learn, serving as a bridge between old wisdom and new understanding. On her final day in London, Dr. Anderson takes her aside for a private conversation. "Beatrice," she says, "they have progressed to first names over the course of the 3 months. I want you to know that your contribution to our research has been invaluable. You have opened our eyes to treatments and approaches we would never have considered. Several of the remedies you shared with us are showing remarkable promise in our trials." "I am glad to have been useful," Beatrice says sincerely. "More than useful, essential." Dr. Anderson pauses, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I would like to maintain our collaboration, if you are willing. I would like to visit Willowmere regularly to continue documenting your practices and outcomes. And I would like to invite you to return to London once or twice a year to share your latest observations and learn about new developments in medical science. Would you be amenable to that?" Beatrice feels something expand in her chest, a sense of possibility and promise. "I would be very amenable indeed." "Excellent. Then let us consider this not an ending but a beginning, a partnership that will benefit both of us and ultimately the patients we serve." The journey back to Willowmere is very different from the journey away. Beatrice travels with a case full of books and medical supplies, gifts from Dr. Anderson and her colleagues. She travels with her mind full of new knowledge, her heart full of gratitude for the experience she has been given. And she travels with a sense of peace that she has never quite felt before, the peace of knowing that she is exactly where she is meant to be, doing exactly what she is meant to do, and that there is room in her life for both service and growth, for both tradition and innovation. Eleanor is waiting at the village station when Beatrice arrives, and they embrace like the friends they have become, like the partners they will continue to be. "Welcome home," Eleanor says. "It is good to be home," Beatrice replies, and means it with all her heart. They walk together through the familiar lanes of Willowmere, past the church and the green, past cottages where people wave and call out greetings, welcoming Miss Moorland back, saying how much she has been missed. And Beatrice feels herself settling back into this place, into this role, but with a new sense of its value and importance. The cottage looks exactly as she left it, the garden thriving under Eleanor's care, the herbs drying from the beams, the workbench neat and organized. Everything is as it should be, and yet everything is different, because Beatrice herself is different, expanded, enriched, more confident in her own abilities and the validity of her calling. That evening, as they sit together by the fire with mugs of their customary chamomile tea, Eleanor asks the question that has been waiting. So, she says with a gentle smile, no regrets. Beatrice considers this, thinking back over the past 3 months, over the journey she has taken both physically and internally. None, she says finally, firmly. I would not change a single thing about my life as it is. Not the choices I made, not the path I followed, not the work I do. This is where I belong. This is what I am meant to do. And now I understand that I can honor both my grandmother's legacy and my own dreams, that I can be both a traditional healer and a contributor to modern medicine, that I don't have to choose between being who I was and becoming who I might be. Eleanor raises her mug in a toast. To becoming, she says. To becoming, Beatrice echoes, and they drink together as the fire crackles and the night settles over Willowmere, over this cottage that has sheltered generations of women healers, over this life that is small in scope, but infinite in meaning. The years that follow bring changes and continuity in equal measure. Beatrice and Eleanor continue their partnership, each bringing her particular strengths to the work, supporting each other through difficult cases and celebrating together when patients recover. Dr. Anderson visits twice a year, documenting their practices, sharing new knowledge, maintaining the collaboration that benefits everyone involved. The comprehensive herbal they created becomes known beyond Willowmere. Other healers hear of it and come to study it, to add their own observations, to learn from the accumulated wisdom it contains. Beatrice and Eleanor begin training apprentices, young women from the village and beyond who show aptitude and calling, passing on their knowledge to a new generation. And slowly, gradually, the work that women like Beatrice and Eleanor have been doing for centuries begins to gain recognition and respect. Physicians start consulting with traditional healers. Medical schools begin including information about herbal remedies in their curricula. The wall between folk medicine and formal medicine begins to crumble, brick by brick. Beatrice never stops learning, never stops growing. She continues to read, to experiment, to question and challenge and discover. She finds that the dreams of her youth, of making contributions to medical knowledge, of being part of something larger than herself, have come true, just not in the way she once imagined. She has achieved them not by leaving her village and her calling behind, but by bringing her full self to the work she was always meant to do. And on quiet evenings, when the day's work is done and she sits by her fire with a book or her needlework, Beatrice sometimes thinks about that mysterious night when her grandmother's second herbal appeared in her cottage, setting in motion a chain of events that transformed her life. She never did discover exactly how it got there. Eleanor swears she simply placed it on the table. But sometimes Beatrice wonders if there was something more, some element of providence or fate or pure chance that arranged things just so. But in the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is what came after. What matters is that she said yes to possibility, yes to change, yes to the life that was trying to happen instead of clinging to the life that was. What matters is that she found partnership and purpose, that she honored both tradition and innovation, that she served her community while also growing beyond its boundaries. And now, dear listener, it is time for you to rest. The cottage is quiet, the fire burns low, and outside the window, the night is peaceful and still.